Welcome to the Fly Culture Podcast, bringing you interviews, reviews and fishing tips. Here's your host, Pete Tigers.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Fly Culture Podcast. I've been getting a lot of requests about the times when I take you fishing with me for a day. So as the requests have come through, I thought, right, okay, let's take you fishing. So we're back on my home water, the River Taw, and I'm fishing with my friend today, Warren McCarthy. What we're going to do is see if we can find some rising fish and fish that are eating mayflies. The day is Thursday. I was here on Sunday and there were mayfly coming off, but the fish weren't eating them yet. It's early. The sun's out. We've had a couple of miserable days with showers and it's a little bit cooler. Driving down, it was about 13 degrees or so. But the sun's looking to try and break through a little bit. I know ideal conditions for mayfly are overcast and a little bit showery. But we're going to see if we can find some fish today. To give you some background of my home river, you probably hear me talk a lot about the River Taw, and I thought I'd tell you a little bit about it. It's about 40-odd miles long, runs on the north side of Dartmoor, and I was thinking about this when I was preparing what I was actually going to say, that it runs off the north side of Dartmoor, and I often say that the river takes time to warm up here, and I wonder if where it's located on that north side, if that does have an impact or not. I don't know, I was just thinking out loud when I was saying that just then, but thought that was worth mentioning. It has three major tributaries, the Latford Yeo, which comes in just below Latford. Then we have the Little Dart, that's just around Cholmondeley part of the world, if you know Devon at all. And then the major tributary is the Mole, which is around King's Nympton it comes in. And the Mole there is about the same size as the upper river. We really term the upper river beyond that sort of junction. There is, over the years, many conversations about certainly the salmon side of things and whether salmon just head up the river and turn left and head up the Mole. I used to guide on the Mole when I worked for Nick. I've caught some salmon there. Where I used to guide was beyond the junction there at the Fox and Hounds Hotel for a very happy 12 years. And I caught salmon up that side of things as well. But where we're fishing today is below that major junction of the Mole. So that's where we are today. We're above Umberley. Just trying to give you a little bit of the geography of where we are today. While I'm standing talking, one of the pools here I'm standing in front of, Warren's just setting up. I'm seeing a couple of fish rising actually, which is encouraging. It's in a faster pool called Washing Pit, which is probably one of the most prolific salmon pools that we fish here. But it's been encouraging to see that the fish sitting in that on the seam of the faster water, and I've seen a couple of fish rise straight away. The plan is to see if we can find some rising fish and throw some flies at them and see how we go. So like I say, I'm fishing with my good friend Warren McCarthy. He's been down a couple of times this year and it's been quiet, that cool session where we had that warm start to the year and we thought, right, here we go, coming into the trout season. He's been down. There's not been a lot going on. We're not sort of snobs about it or anything like that, but we like to try and find some rising fish and throw some casts at those. So my fingers are really tightly crossed to see if we get a chance at some today. I've seen, Warren, a couple rising in Washing Pit just off the seam of the fast water, but more importantly, how are you doing, bud?
Morning, Pete. Yeah, great to be back down here. Thank you. The river's looking lovely. I don't know if you just said that the breeze, a little bit of a chill to the breeze, but it's still early doors. But yeah, great to be back. And I think the usual thing for the pair of us is to fish bamboo and stick with the dry flies, even if it's possibly not the most productive. It's what we're gonna stay with today. I hope so, anyway.
Absolutely. And I was going to tie on as well. I know over the winter you've been, and you're a very fine fly tyer, but you've been really into fishing catskill patterns. And it was you really, I've known about them sort of in the background for a number of years now. And I know we had some images, I know Perry did some artwork on a catskill fly that we put in the magazine a little while back. But you've really got into tying them, haven't you?
Definitely, yeah. Tying more than fishing, dare I say. I mean, I just think they're beautiful things to look at. They caught my eye maybe 18 months ago, and then I started attempting to tie them, and now I've got more and more into them, and the materials and the different hooks and the older style tying. It'd be interesting to see. I personally, on the waters I fish back at home, the fact that they're so high riding, high floating, they're probably not going to be my first choice of fly. But if ever they're going to come into the frame, it will be with a few Mayfly about, hopefully, because the very nature of the pattern, they tend to sit high, slightly bigger sizes possibly. Traditionally, they're 14s, 12s, and 10s. Although I do tie them right down to 20s. They obviously the traditional patterns were in the 14s, 12s, and 10 range. So yeah, let's give them a whirl. We'll stick some on. I'll carry them everywhere, but they very rarely find their way onto the end of the line. But from a tying point of view, yeah, lovely things to tie and look at, I think. Just lovely.
And you say they're high riding. Do you think that was designed for the rivers of the Catskill area? And I guess, is it some of those famous ones like the Battenkill and stuff like that? Does that come under the Catskills? I'm not 100% sure, but are they designed to sit high on those sorts of streams in Eastern America?
Absolutely. From what I've read, I have no experience of these waters firsthand, but from what I do, quite a bit of reading on it, and absolutely, yeah, it's the nature of the water, the boulders, the riffles, the more turbulent water, and obviously predominantly they've got a large hackle around the wing posts, and I would imagine, and I believe that's exactly what they were tied in mind. Yeah, that sort of water. Yeah.
Nice. And you tied some up and given me some, so that's the first fly I'm going to tie on this morning. Once we see some fish signs of Mayfly. I've not seen any yet, maybe a little bit early. Like I say, when I was down here on Sunday, they were coming off from relatively early on. And I wonder if that, as Warren says, if that wind eases back a little bit, the sun comes through, it may just take the temperature up a little bit and we may see some signs of hatching fish. Like Warren said, we're fishing some bamboo today. We just like doing it. It's not an elitist thing. It's not a snobbish thing. It's just fun. We're big Gearac fans, as I'm sure many of you are as well, and we kind of like that aspect of it. But what are you fishing today, bud?
From a rod point of view, I've got my John French, Arfield and French. It's the first one I bought. It's a beautiful rod. It's still my go-to when slightly bigger, slightly wider waters and it need just a little bit more oomph. It's a 7.3 for a 4-weight, but I would describe it as quite a strong 4-weight, if that makes any sense. It's got just a little bit of backbone to it. So hopefully we'll see how we get on.
Nice. So I've got my Bannister. It's a 7'9" 4-weight. It's his newish taper, and it's taken some time to find the right sort of line. I fished again, funnily enough, with Warren over the winter, and we chased some grayling with some bamboo rods. And I remember saying to him that I felt like I fished this rod all my life, really, or a long time anyway, at least. And I'd had a line on there that felt really nice, but as I was fishing, as the trout season got underway, I couldn't make it work. It just didn't feel the way I wanted it to feel. And now I've got what I feel is a winning combination. It's a Rio Creek line I've got on there, actually, and it just shoots really well. It loads the rod really smoothly and elegantly and fires it out. And just even while we're talking now, there's a few flies coming off. It's funny watching with this wind here. The wind shifted around when I was here on Sunday. The wind was coming downstream. It feels as though it's coming just from a slightly different direction today. So that may certainly one of the pools that we really like to fish. I think that'll suit it really well. What we tend to do on these days, because we want to try and find a rising fish, and I've found over the years that sometimes here, and one of the podcasts I did on the river here, I hooked a couple and landed a couple of really nice fish, that I find if I'm patient and wait for these fish and signs of them, I've got a better shot of it. And historically, Devon fish or West Country fish hit the fly very, very quickly, but I find I can set on fish better if I know that I'm casting to a fish that I know that's feeding, rather than if I'm fishing the water, if that makes sense. So that's what we're probably going to try and do. I'll keep you posted with what we're doing, where we are, and try and describe the river as best as I possibly can, so you get a sense of what we're doing and what the plan is, and see how it unfurls. So we're tying our flies on at the moment. I've just tied mine on. Absolute dream that I managed to thread it through Nice and easily first go as well, so that was good. And I think that's partly down to Warren's tying skills as well, that the eye of the hook's lovely and clear. I've put on his catskill pattern. It's a Mayfly style pattern. And my thinking behind it is that we've seen a few fish rise, and part of it is that I'd like to try and cover one. I'm looking for those splashy Mayfly rises. But my thinking is, if the fish are on it, even if they've perhaps eaten a midge, but they're aware of the Mayfly and they are almost locked onto them, that I think that they may eat it anyway. So, and it gives us a bit of information as well, so that if I've covered it and it's not eating it, then it may tell us that particular fish is locked onto a specific thing. But I often find when it's Mayfly time that, it's too good a meal to let pass. So my gut is to try that out and see how it goes. There, to describe a sort of catskill fly, it's a traditional sort of dry fly pattern with a hackle that goes all the way round, not sort of like a parachute pattern at all. And I've started off by just putting gink or floatant on the top part of the hackles, so that the feet, as they would be, or the legs or whatever, are in the water. What are you doing, Warren? Are you doing something similar, or have you ginked it all the way around?
I've done the same as you at the moment. I'm going to leave, because the water we're looking at now is obviously slightly calmer. It's not slow glide, but certainly closer to that ilk. So I've done the same as you. I mean, you've gone straight in on the Mayfly, the green drake pattern. I've gone slightly more conservative and put a good old-fashioned Adams on, but obviously the old school upwing Adams. It's got a bit of a thicker hack. Obviously the original Adams has got the red game and the grizzle hackle. So because this has got two hackles on it, it's slightly more in the way of hackle around the front of the fly. So it's quite buoyant anyway. But yeah, anything to do with quicker water riffles, then I'll be kinking the whole thing up and see how it sits, to be honest. Whether that's the right or wrong way, I'm not sure, but it's how I tend to do it.
Nice, that makes perfect sense to me. So we're standing in a pool called Island Pool, and it's a flat, slowish pool. It's a great pool when salmon are running as well. Just waiting to see. We'd seen, as we said, when we were setting up, a couple of fish rise, and we're just waiting to see. There's sort of an old oak tree that's perilously leaning over, but it's putting some lovely shadow over the pool. It's quite a big pool. It's probably, what do you give me, 45 foot across. So just seen a rise now as well. And we might give these fish a little bit of a go. They look like they're sipping rather than eating the mayflies. And I was thinking about what Warren said about putting his Adams pattern on, and I've got the mayfly. And if you're fishing with a buddy, it's a really good way to figure out what's going on as well. So it's a fun way. Obviously, observation gives you a big clue as well. But I always think when it's mayfly time, and I'm so excited to see if we can hook a fish on a mayfly as well. That's why I've gone straight in. But I think that's the time when sometimes you can get away with slightly more creative fly choices. So we're going to see. But it looks as though there's one or two fish. They're not consistent risers. What we're going to have to do is that we're standing on the left bank as we look downstream, and we're just looking upstream a little bit from us at the moment. The pool where we are, where our side is very, very shallow, but it gets quite deep. So it involves a little bit of wading and then being patient again, because once you get out there, you do send some little ripples up across the pool. Sometimes it puts fish off, not always, but it's sometimes wait to see. And once I've got into position, I like to wait a little bit and see if the fish are going to feed again. So I think Warren's going to have first shot here, because they don't look to me like they're mayfly feeders. So yeah, give it a go, bud. Well, what do you know? Warren went out into position. We were watching really, really carefully and saw a couple of fish, like we said, sipping, and then we saw something go kersplush at a couple of flies, and he unfortunately gave his position away. You can probably hear me, Warren, and the dog standing there. The dog wants to see the fish. Mate, what about that then?
Pete, I'm absolutely over the moon. That's I've had a few near misses with these, haven't I? But this is absolute stunning. Like you say, once we got it in the right place, it took it straight away. Beautiful fish, bit bigger than I thought it was when it first went. But yeah, absolutely over the moon with that. It's a cracker.
And the Catskills work. It's a trout. It's a trout of about 1.5 pounds, I would say. Would you say 1.5 pounds?
Yeah, I think so. It's certainly close to that. Yeah, it's an absolute belter. Beautiful fish.
And yeah, there was no hesitation. The fly went over it and put one cast just to the right of it, and then one right on the money, and boom, straight away. Strong fish. You could see the rod hooped over. Absolutely stunning. We're going to get some photos and have a quick hug as well. We stepped just a tiny few feet upstream. Now, plan really is to see, we've seen the odd mayfly come off, and it's still only, 10:30. And our plan is not to sit too long on any spot. If we see a fish rise, we'll go for it and then keep covering water or keep looking for new water and keep walking round another mayfly upstream. But it was really, really cool to see. Have you come down? Are you still buzzing?
No, I'm still there at the moment. I've just been gabbering away, haven't I, for the last couple of minutes, speaking gibberish. But no, what a lovely, lovely start to the day. And there's more mayfly coming off now as we're stood here, isn't there? And I'll be honest with you, they're very similar size and colour, dare I say it, to what you've slung on this morning. So fingers crossed, I may even make the change. Despite catching one on the Adams, I may even change over before the next cast. But yeah, lovely, wonderful start. Thank you.
Well, look for these splashy rises, look for those signs of mayfly feeders. Warren makes the drive down. He left at silly o'clock this morning. We got to mine, had a bacon sandwich and a cup of coffee. And he lives in chalkstream territory, but I'm deeply honoured and flattered that he likes to come down here. And the Taw isn't an easy river to fish. The pool I described is, as I said, was long and flat, but it's quite a complex current, and the current that sort of goes down the 3/4 of a cross is the main flow, and often the fish will sit on the outside edge of that flow. It's only a gentle flow, but that means drag can become a massive issue. And you've probably discovered, haven't you, that the Taw can be a harsh mistress, isn't she? She doesn't give up the fish easily.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned drag there, and I think that's been the biggest learning curve for me. A lot of the chalk, I tend to fish the smaller chalk streams for the wild fish, but even so, a lot of the time, mending the line is not something you tend to have to think about as much. It's more straight, traditional upstream, straightforward drifts with no change of pace. But this place has been a bugger to me with drag and learning to mend the line correctly at the right time, and just to get yourself in the right position before you make the cast. So it's been a learning curve, and that's why it's such a relief to finally nail one, to be honest. But yeah, great.
And it was interesting watching you play the fish, and I've talked many times on here about the ability of a rod to actually obviously deliver the fly to its destination with the right fly choice and everything else. But the other thing, and like I say, I've said many times before, that watching your rod play the fish makes life easier. There's a lot more give in the rod, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, this is the second season now. I've probably exclusively been fishing the bamboo, and I think it's just you can't help but glance at that lovely curve in the rod, and I think because they're predominantly shorter rods, possibly from the carbon that I used to fish, I'm definitely more mindful of it, and it seems to add to the experience for me.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Go Team's Catskill. Well, I'd seen Warren spotted a fish rising a little bit further out, and it looked like it was a mayfly rise. And I covered it a couple of times, and we were having a discussion. Perhaps it was better to wait for the fish to rise more consistently, a little bit more hatch, and then just a tiny short distance downstream of me, not a long cast, I saw a fish rise, and it just supped something, and it looked like it was an okayish sort of fish. Now, I say it wasn't a long distance away. It was one of those really nasty casts that you've got to get it right in the bank, but you've got a very low overhanging branch, and then you've got grass behind you. So what you've got to try and do, there's two things you've got to try and do, is send your back cast high so it goes over the grass, and then your forward cast has got to come pretty flat. Now, the problem with that is that if your back cast is high and your forward cast is flat, you're in danger of it landing like a pile of spanners on the water. So that was part of the issue as well. And I spent some time on the fish. And I was lucky. I'd had one of those ones where I was sort of almost rushing the forward cast to try and get it in there. And then I'd spend some time where I'd just been bringing my line in. Sometimes your fly line knots up a little bit of its own free will, the loops of the line and stuff. And I spent some time untangling that. And we'd seen a fish rise downstream almost in the same spot that Warren caught his one. I said to Warren, I'll give it a couple more and then see what happens, and managed to get one in, and it was quite exciting, wasn't it?
Yeah, firstly, I'm glad you mentioned the cast, because it was an absolute pig of a cast, let's be honest. It was a tricky one to get in there. But the thing that stood out for me was it had to be of some size, because it just literally engulfed a size 10 mayfly pattern, and the Catskill's a big size 10 pattern, if that makes sense as well. And it almost sucked it all in one go. So yeah, and well, what a fish. What an absolute, you can talk about the fish, but incredible size, incredible looks, and the power in it. Yeah, that was some battle.
It was one of those really tricky ones, that the fish was incredibly strong, and we had an excited Labrador as well. He's not had much to go at this year. So he was sort of sat on the bank with Warren, getting excited, wanting to be in on the action. That's the only very, very slight downside, was that it was such a good sized fish that getting that in over the net with a shorter rod took a little bit of doing. I had to have 2 attempts at it, I'll be honest. But it had eaten that fly so well it wasn't coming off. I've got one of those McLean weigh nets and was very lucky to be able to weigh it, and came in at 2.25 pounds, which for the West Country is a magnificent specimen of a fish. It was a rising fish that we managed to target, managed to catch. And like I say, I guess we feel what we were talking about at the very beginning of this was, being patient, waiting for that moment, seeing a chance and trying to take it. And we've both been extremely lucky that we've had 2 beautiful, beautiful fish. Within probably only half an hour of fishing, we've moved probably, 30 feet? 30 feet, something like that, and had 2 memorable fish. I think if you're fishing the West Country, either of these you'd be absolutely over the moon with. So absolutely phenomenal time. And let's see if there's some more. There's a few more mayfly starting to come off. As I said, we've walked back down to where we started just to see if that fish would rise. And it was probably only 20 odd feet from where I was standing playing that fish, but it seemed to rise relatively happily. We've not seen it while we've been talking. We've been waiting for signs of it to show again, but it hasn't. But we'll give it a couple more minutes more. If not, we'll have a wander upstream. We just walked a short way upstream, and it's a pool where Warren's got some unfinished business. He hooked a really big one 2-3 years back, and we're just waiting again to see if if the pool's showing any signs of life up here. One of the things I'd say is we were both remarking before I turned the recorder on how alive the river looks, and there are just massive plumes of midges. There's some small olives. There's the odd mayfly. It just looks absolutely stunning right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's alive. Like you say, we've got midges, mayfly and olives all around us, really. I'm not exaggerating. So, yeah, it's really woken up in the last hour, in the space of the hour that we've been here.
And it's fascinating seeing each little section of pool. We're near the top of the beat now at the moment, and again, if you're a regular listener, you may have heard me mention the honey hole, and we're not really looking at that. It's really good. I would call it duo water, really. It's a pool probably 30 feet long, but it's sort of where it's cut a bit of a bank away, so it's only small. It's deep in pots. I had somebody a friend hook a really nice fish in there a few years back, but it's not what I'd call one of those consistent sort of pools, but looks pretty. I'm sort of half looking at that, but it's beyond that. The pool, I don't know the name of the pool really. It's sort of similar to the first pool we fished this morning. It's a great dry fly pool, and the flow goes down the true right bank side as you look downstream, hits a sort of little bay, and then comes out against a oak tree and sort of comes out towards the middle of the river. It's quite a wide pool, but the fish, if we're going to see anyone there, are going to be towards the tail where the oak tree comes out. There's a deeper pot there, and that's where I've had fish in the past. I had a time once where I was fishing here with Monty, my dog, and fish were rising, and I hooked the fish, and this thing just screamed upstream, and I just said to my dog, don't think we're getting this one in, before it broke me off a long way upstream. So we're sort of keeping an eye out there. I've not seen any real signs of rising fish there. I don't know if that was one just then. Did you see that? No. We might have to walk up a little bit. Yeah, we're probably 60 feet away from the pool we want to fish. You may hear the background soundtrack of the river in the background that sounds wonderful. It's mesmerising. It just feels wonderful. The dog's wading by our side at the moment as well. We're just walking upstream. We're going to have a quick look and see if anyone's rising in there. If nothing happens there, then we'll save that for this afternoon, because where we're standing on the river now, the sun is coming down into the river, so it's sort of spreading its rays downstream. So I guess it will be in the fish's eyes. So if we're going to see fish rising, it's probably going to be in spots where it's a lot more shaded, and it may be we have to search those out. As the day goes on, though, then the sun will come round behind the fish, and we might see a little bit more activity in more open areas. But I think it's probably going to be the more sheltered, shadowy spots this morning that we might get lucky in. I think I've just seen a rise, bud. So it's all pretty quiet at the top, so we decided to walk down a little bit further, and we're in a pool called 4 Acres, and it's called 4 Acres because it's a really long pool, slower and flat. We've got the bias of the flow is on the far side of where we're standing on the left bank. The bias of the flow is down the right bank side, and we've seen a couple of small fish rise. Warren said he thought he saw something, might be the head of something a little bit better. There's a few going here, but not hard. Again, good hatch. This is a pool for me. Where we started, Island Pool's a really good one because it's really well sheltered from most wind situations, bar a big downstreamer. Even a small downstreamer, it's usually okay. But this one, 4 Acres, usually gives me a clue as to the mood of the river. We've watched, even while I've had the mic on and been talking, there's a small fish risen about 3 times now. Not so many mayfly. Have you seen many mace yet? No, just 1 or 2. Not so much. So it may be again that we keep our powder dry and wait and see. But we'll see. When I look at it downstream where it gets slow, it really reminds me of the Usk actually. And it's kind of the trees encroach right over the river and keep it sheltered, and that flow, as I said, goes all the way pretty much down that far side there. And yeah, when I look downstream, it kind of looks like that. The head of the pool is probably, I don't know, 120, 130 feet upstream. But it's usually here in this area down from there that we tend to find those rising fish. We're just scanning the water. If we see something, that little guy's stopped now as well. It looks as though they're not sort of feeding hard, or we haven't seen signs of it, but it may be that, there's the mayfly are playing a small part here and there aren't so many around. And again, rather than specking it, and you could potentially put a good fish down by fishing the water. So it's, to me, makes more sense just to wait and see, and if nothing happens, then we'll move on again and have a look somewhere else. There's a bit where we started, the washing pit, a slightly faster even flow down the middle of the pool, that I did see a fish head and tail that looked okay, and that's sort of playing on my mind a little bit. But we're just seeing another mayfly actually just take off. We'd like to take our time and just wait and see what we can find. And like I say, when you've got a fish that you're casting to that's rising, I think I've got a better chance of setting on it as well, because I'm sort of mentally ready for it, and I'm in that zone ready for if that fish does rise to me. So we slowly walked up the river looking for some more rising fish, and it's been a little bit quieter. I don't know if the sun coming out has had an impact on stuff. There's a few more mays starting to appear, but we've just quietly and slowly walked up the river looking to see what's going on. Perhaps it may be that we need that sun to come round a little bit. It's not blazing or anything at the moment, but it may have just put that fish off from those early morning session that we had, an amazing one. We're standing here at the moment, there's mayfly all around us at the moment, but one of our great traditions is a bit of lunch, and Warren has an awesome farm shop nearby where he lives, and he brings a bit of lunch down. What delights have we got for lunch today, bud?
We've got mutton and red currant pies. I take it for the listeners. We have, so that's the choice of mutton and red currant or beef burgundy pie today. The traditional sausage roll, and of course the sliced meats, the cured meats that we always sling in there. So we've done all right. I think we've done all right. There's, just in case we're still hungry, there's a couple of sausage rolls in there as well, Pete. So I think we've got enough.
I think we've earned it today, bud, as well, haven't we?
We really have, yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to have that, and then what we usually do is sit down. I get a cigar out, Warren gets his pipe out, and we just put the world to rights. And we're sort of sitting. I usually put some chairs out, and we sit down and have a eat, have a smoke, and everything else. But I've forgotten the key to where I keep the chairs, so we won't be doing that today. So we positioned ourselves in island pool just in case we see anyone go, and see how things go from there. But looking forward to this. I've got the copper. It's some sliced cured meat, which looks fantastic. So that's usually our starter. A few slices of that. I've gone for the lamb and red currant pie. I'm going to have that, and then we'll see where we go from there. That's a wrap on lunch. The pie was everything I hoped. The copper ham was outstanding, and I've had a brownie just to finish it off. I've just lit up a nice cigar. Warren's got his pipe on the go. He brought a treat for the dog as well. He's just sitting quietly eating that at the moment. The part of it is the lunch thing as well, and just talking about shit, really. And we were talking about music, and I was saying that hoping to catch up with my friends and see the Blackbirds. Rowan, if you're listening, I know you're a big fan as well. But that got cancelled, and so we've been quite civilised, and we're going out for dinner. And Warren and I were just talking about the days where things might be different, and we were talking about Northern Soul music as well. And I don't know if you're old enough or of a vintage to know what Northern Soul is, or the dance moves, and how we'd probably rip a hamstring attempting those moves these days, and everything else that goes with it. But it's part of it for me. This is part of the fun of fishing, is talking about stuff and sharing experiences about life in general, really, not just about the fishing. The sun's on the pool now, but we've seen a couple of fish rise. There are a few mayfly around, but it's a little bit brighter. The sun, I would say, is about halfway round the river, so it's not sort of behind the fish right now. So it's still going to be a case of looking for the shaded areas, I guess, to find some fish. But we're in no rush. As I said, we've seen a couple rising. Actually, one's just risen in front of us at the tail of Island Pool now, but we're in no rush. We're having too good a time right now. So thanks for that, buddy. I think that was really tasty, and it was pretty cool to put the world to rights as well, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I love the lunchtime natters. Almost worth coming for alone. I think I've said that before, but no, we're just thinking about having another cast or two now. I think I've whipped off the Adams, as good as it was to me, and I'm all in on the green drake now. See if it can hopefully bring up a fish or two. We'll have a go.
We've seen a fish rise just near to where Warren hooked his first fish, actually, but it's in a more sheltered position. It's one of those where we think it's an okay fish. We've seen some rises. It's probably risen 4 or 5 times, quite splashy rises. There's some hatch around. I haven't seen. Have you seen many mayfly of late? There's one or two about. We've even seen some yellow sallies, actually. Or there's another good fish just gone a bit further upstream as well. So it looks as though the rises, to me, look like they could well be mayfly ones. So we'll see what happens. But there's a bit of activity in there. So I think Warren's going to have a wander out. Like he said, he's gone all in on the green drake. And we'll give it a go and see how we get on. Warren's got himself into position, and once he gets into position, you can see what a difficult cast it is, because he's got a really low hanging oak branch almost above him, not quite. But his back cast, he hasn't got a lot of space because there's a lot of grass on the bank. So what he's tried to do is get out as far as he possibly can. We can see some mayflies on the water. The fish that's risen 3-4 times looks a good one, but it's going to be a tricky one. And where he's got to land it as well, there's a branch hanging down from another tree that's tighter to the bank. So it's a really difficult, tricky shot to have a go at. But he's just sort of, you can see him sort of playing the cast through in his mind, which is a really good way to think about it. But we'll see what happens. The first cast's going out. So that's given him a marker. And I think that's probably a little bit, he's pulling more line off his reel now because it's a longer cast than you think. As I said, it's not a small sort of West Country stream here because you've got the influence of the mole coming in. That it's quite a big river here. So we'll see what happens. It's kind of one of those catch-22s that you've got to get near enough to be able to cover it. Oh, that cast going out. Yeah, that's the one. He's right on him there. Right on him. He's mended his line nicely. Yeah, you've got to get out far enough so that you can make the cast, but you don't want to get too close that you potentially spook the fish. But, of course, the pool gets a lot deeper as well. So it's a really tricky, not very straightforward cast. But I thought that one was going to be the one, I have to say. He's just thrown another one out there. We've not seen it go. It may be that where he's waded out, those ripples may, just in the very short term, have put the fish down. But I often find with mayfly that, that caution, even if there is a little bit of a ripple versus a great big mayfly pattern, or a mayfly natural, they'll eat it still. So it's interesting to see how this one's going to play out. So he's only gone and done it. He's playing the fish now. It looks a good fish. Can you see it at all, bud? No, he's not seen it yet. But I think it's a good fish. There's a big bend in his rod. It was a good aggressive take. Warren's set on it. And he's just playing it now. It's going upstream, which I always take as a sign that it's a good fish. And they're just doing the dance together now at the moment. But it's coming in towards his feet here as well. There's me. I'm sort of with the dog here at the moment. I think it's a good fish. It's a nice fish. It's a nice fish, but we thought it might have been it's a nice fish. Yeah, good pound, I would say. Good pound and a bit. Yeah, beauty, mate. Well done. Mate, that was just great skill. One more false cast and it would have been in the grass. It was perfectly judged. Beautiful fish. We reckon about a pound or so, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. Just such a pretty fish. And I went all quiet for a bit there because it was quite a challenging cast, and I thought I'd blown it, but no, that's great. Again, lovely, and it's took the mayfly as well. So we've got it on the big boy. Lovely, really lovely.
That's nicely done, and I think that's one of the prettiest fish, or it is the prettiest fish of the day. Beautifully marked, stunning condition. I know we say these things, fought above its weight and all that sort of stuff, but it really did. I thought it was a mother lode at first, and when it took as well. But it's just so thrilling to do this, and we're not going to end the day with hundreds of fish, but it doesn't matter. What we've done is chosen the fish that we wanted to go after and got a result from them, which has been really cool. The nice thing is the takes have been so positive, haven't they? Yeah, that took it well done. Yeah, proper take again. Made no mistake. It did, like you say, it did tear off with felt like a lot of weight to it, but yeah, it's still beautiful. Nicely done. So we had a slow walk up to the top bit of the beat, and we'd seen a couple of fish rising, generally smaller ones, and then we saw one that looked like it was possibly in emergers. I threw a few with the catskill over it, nothing. Warren thought perhaps there was a chance of emergers, so I put on Mayfly pattern that is my go-to from my good friend Duncan Rayner, the Mega May. And that's the one, usually, if I'm going to bring a fish up, it's going to be that one. I've so much confidence in it. But it didn't touch that, changed again, and I tried one of Paul Proctor's new patterns from Fulling Mill. It's a Mayfly emerger of some sort, and nothing. But we'd seen a fish that we thought was a smaller one rising towards the very back of the pool. It's a tricky pool to fish because the flow is very fast and goes over some rocks, and drag really is a big enemy that you have to overcome. You have to kind of get into the pool that you're about to fish just so that you can overcome some of that drag. And we'd seen this fish rise. I flipped the fly over and it ate it. And it was a little bit bigger than we thought. Probably, we think, 3/4 of a pound, half pound.
Yeah, nearer 3/4. I think.
Yeah.
I think we're getting a bit complacent now about the size of fish. It was a lovely fish, yeah.
And that one came and ate it. And we thought, right, okay, let's wander back downstream again. We're going to head back down to 4 Acres because that was probably the most quiet of the pools that we've seen. We're going to go past Island Pool where Warren had his last fish from, just in case, see if anything's happening. The sun is out now. It's starting to move. It's not quite there yet, but it's starting to move around the river a little bit more now. But there's some nice shaded areas. The hatch is sort of, I would best describe it as spluttering, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, just for people listening, it's not. We keep saying about Mayfly, but it's not like I would be lucky enough to experience perhaps a bit further down south where there's Mayfly everywhere and fish you've never seen before start popping. It's certainly not like that. I mean, really, there's just the odd one or two coming off, isn't there? To be honest, you have to look for them as opposed to they're all around you. Is the best way I'd describe it. But they're definitely coming off. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's a really good point. And I think that's one of the things that plays into our advantage because, and I'm sure I've probably mentioned this before, so apologies if I have, but it's one of those ones where you have enough fly that the fish get locked onto them, but not so many that the fish become super selective. So you always feel, if you've seen that sort of splashy mayfly rise, that you're in with a little bit of a shout. And I think that's probably what plays to our advantage a little bit, although it would be cool to have a few more, and the hatch may gain some more momentum as well. You know, we're 19th of May today, so there is more time yet as well, but it's kind of cool to see that they're happy to eat those right now, which is deeply encouraging. Sometimes the game plays out exactly how you hope it will, and we came back down to 4 Acres again where the oak tree is hanging over the pool and there's a nice sheltered bit. The maize, as we'd said, aren't really sort of flooding off at the moment, but it's quite clear that the fish are aware of what they are and they're on them. And the pool, I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier, it looks as though it's a pretty straightforward pool, but there's a lot of different little flows in what looks appear flat water. So often you're getting drag, or worse still, micro drag, and not really knowing about it. So line management's really, really important. Warren, though, made a really nice cast at a fish we'd seen rise. We'd sort of came down to the river, saw it rise. He wandered out and cast to it, and I think it was a couple of casts, and he was locked into a fish. It was quite clear. I was on the phone to John, our magazine designer, actually, and we were talking about the summer edition that's going to be going to the printers in the next 3 weeks or so. And we were chatting there. I said, I've got to go. Warren's locked into something. And it was a really nice fish and strong fish. I'll hand over to Warren to tell us a little bit more about how it all played out, really.
It's turned into quite a special day, really. I mean, that I think it was second cast to cover it, and it took really positive take again, really woofed it down. And another lovely fish. I think, what did we say? 1.75 pounds. That one actually went, we stuck that one on the scales very quickly in the weigh net, and that was 1.75 pounds. But it was a very strong fish and just unbelievable fun on this bamboo rod. I can't stress enough how much fun it is. But yeah, great day so far. We've got no complaints, that's for sure. Today it's been a special day.
Yeah, we've been lucky. The sun's come out now. It's actually quite warm. There's mayfly duns. There's still some yellow sallies. There's even some mayfly spinners around now as well that I've seen. We're going to have a walk back up and see if we can find another fish or two. I sort of had a smaller fish have a look at the fly and didn't commit. I don't know if it's sometimes with these smaller ones when it's a larger fly like that they can't whack it, and so they try and drown the fly first. That's going to be my excuse for that one anyway. But yeah, really cool. It's only, the shade is probably 50, 60 feet, and no more than that really. Probably less than about that, but a small neck of main flow that was sort of trying to work here, but it's proved fruitful. This pool for me is always a really good indicator as to how the river is and what the fish are doing, because it's not sheltered like Island Pool. I get a real sense of how cool it is, what the conditions are like, are there many things hatching. And first thing this morning, there wasn't a great deal going on, but there's a little bit more. There's some smaller fish where the sun's on the water. It's now almost behind us now, which is great. So we're seeing some smaller fish rise out of the shade now as well. But my gut is that the nicer fish will probably stay in those shaded areas. They're shady because the trees are there, and so as a result the pools are a little bit deeper as well. So I think that's probably what we'll do, but we're going to have a look up and have a walk upstream again, see how we get on. So we decided to chalk the day up. It's just got a little bit cooler. I got really lucky that I walked upstream and there was a spot, low hanging branch, saw a rise, saw it again, put Duncan's Mega May over it, and the fish ate. It was my prettiest one of the day. We weighed it again, £1.5. Beautiful fish. It's been a really interesting one that, you know, it may sound as though we've been incredibly lucky, and I think we have. We've hit it just right today, but we've taken our time. So, you know, we could have had a big numbers day, possibly. I don't know. We left the smaller fish alone, and we saw 2 or 3 nice small fish going about their business, and decided just to leave them alone and just concentrate to see if we could see some nice fish rising. We weren't specimen hunting by any means, but we just wanted to see those nice rises, confident rises, and managed to catch a few nice fish. Now it's 6, we had 3 apiece, and we've looked out for each other. The last one, Warren was covering a fish that looked as though it was sort of moving around the pool a fair bit, and as I said, I just wandered upstream just to have a quick look, see if I could find another one, and he looked pretty engrossed, so I thought, well, I'll do the gentlemanly thing and have a chuck at it and go from there. But it's been really cool for a number of reasons. One of them that, like I said during this podcast, that the tour doesn't give up the fish easily, and they aren't all, you know, this sort of size. I think we've learned by taking our time and looking for fish rather than covering the water. We've managed to find some nice ones, and that's been good. The other thing is that Warren makes a long drive down. You know, it's 2 3/4 hours, nearly 3 hours from probably 3 hours from where he lives. And sometimes this river's been tough to both of us, yet it's been really, really nice today to see it give something back to the time and love that he's invested into it. Mate, it's been awesome today. It's been one of those really cool days, and it's been fun, hasn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Yeah, it has been proper. It's a proper cool day. We've done what we usually do. We've had a good wander up and down together. We've had a few casts. We've had our lunch, which we've done on the past 2 or 3 occasions, I think. But we've had the added bonus of, say, half a dozen wonderful fish thrown in as well. So that's the icing on the cake. But to me, it's everything what a day's fishing should be. Just say quite leisurely, would you say, laid back, taking it in turns to chuck at fish. Wonderful lunch, and yeah, just great, and it's just lovely day. Thank you. Sorry, I've started to babble a bit, as I have throughout the day, but I hope that's the excitement that's come through, because it's been a great day.
Awesome, bud, and it's been fantastic. And like you say, it's how we roll on these sorts of days. And I think I've talked many times before about choosing the right sort of fishing friend, and you choose, or you see a nice fish rise and you don't mind, you get as pleased when your friend catches the fish as you would have done. And there's always that little bit of pride when it's your home water that you want it to fish well, and it's fished pretty well for us today. We're watching a couple of small fish still rising here, but we've had our fill. We don't need to catch a whole lot more. It's been everything we hoped it would be and a little bit more. So, mate, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll be fishing together again soon. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Fly Culture podcast. I really enjoy recording these for you, and this one, getting back on the river, has been great fun as well. I've deeply enjoyed that. I hope if you're continuing to enjoy these, that you'll consider subscribing to them so that they come to you. We don't charge you for this. There's no hidden extras or anything else. It's just want to share our love of fly fishing with you. So thanks so much for listening, and there'll be plenty more podcasts very, very soon.